Today on the Women Mind the Water Art of a series on womenmindthewater.com, I'm speaking with California-based artist Julia C.R. Gray. Julia says she has wanted to find a way to be more connected with nature. She found that connection through her she sculptures. Julia uses slip casting and hand building methods to mold female forms that represent the strength and vulnerability of women, a dichotomy that Julia believes women's bodies share with the ocean. The Women Mind the Water Art of a Series podcast on womenmindthewater.com engages artists in conversation about their work and explores their connection with the ocean. Through their stories, Women Mind the Water hopes to inspire and encourage action to protect the ocean and her creatures. Today, I'm speaking with Julia C.R. Gray, a California artist who lives in Cardiff by the Sea. Julia's love of nature, her walks on the beach at sunrise, and contemplation of the perfect spiral of a seashell are evident in her sculptures. Welcome, Julia. Thank you for contacting me and offering to share your deeply personal message about women and the ocean. I'm looking forward to discussing your artistic practice and some of your work. Let's begin by learning a bit more about you. You live in Cardiff by the Sea, California, which I discovered is in San Diego County. Have you always lived near the ocean, and has proximity to the ocean shaped your view?
First of all, thank you, Pam, for having me on Women Mind the Water. I'm really excited to be here. I was born in Los Angeles and I grew up in Orange County. So I spent a lot of time at the beach as a kid, living in Orange County. And my husband and I moved to San Diego to raise our kids.
Okay, so has your proximity to the ocean shaped your view of the world in any way?
The ocean is so important. It's kind of the breath of the earth, and that connection to the ocean for me is spiritual.
So tell me about your interactions with the ocean. Are you mostly someone who looks at it from the shore, or do you physically immerse yourself in it? For example, do you swim or scuba dive?
This year I plan to learn to scuba dive. I haven't done it ever. Well, actually, when I was a teenager, I did a little bit, so I want to get back into scuba diving. But right now I boogie board in the ocean and swim. And I walk the beach at sunrise regularly, almost every day.
So during your observations of the Pacific Ocean, what sort of any changes have you noticed over the years in the ocean and the coastline?
The high tide is one. It just seems there's more flooding, more tide coming in. But the other thing locally, they're wanting to save the cliffs by replenishing the sand. And what's happened when they've done that is it's killed off a lot of the crabs and sea life. So there's this balance that society is trying to do in, staving off global warming and the rising in the seas. And yet, some of the things that they've done have caused problems. So I've seen that. We used to see lots and lots of crabs all around, and they've really diminished.
That's too bad. So how have these changes affected you personally?
It kind of breaks my heart. Personally, it just makes me want to have people be more aware, that this is important, that we don't want to lose these creatures. And as we lose this life, it affects our quality of life. And we're on the chain too. We're also part of that. So yeah, it really does touch me.
So I see some of your sculptures behind you, and I want to ask you, how come you chose a woman's torso to use as your canvas?
So first of all, I'm a woman and I go through life as a woman, and so it's authentic to me to work with a woman's torso. I'm not comfortable working with a men's torso. I've tried a little bit, but it just doesn't feel authentic. And the first time I sculpted a woman's torso was when I was at San Francisco Art Institute, completing my bachelor's in 2014. And I sculpted it and I divided it to put images on the inside. So people had to look into it. And it created a canvas, like the perfect canvas that I can keep using and talk about all the things that are important to me, from women's rights to climate change to the ocean itself. And so my work is consistent, but yet I can say so much more.
How interesting that you started by putting the conversation inside the body, but the pictures that I have seen are outside. So why did you bring the message out?
I actually do both. So I think I sent you a video of one that I'm working on, and it's actually behind me. So there's you can see the front pieces. There's 3 pieces in the front and 3 pieces in the back. And on the inside of each of those columns are painted images. And this one's specifically about the ocean and some of the things that I love about the ocean and some of the things that upset me, like the plastic. I didn't mention plastic, seeing plastic on the beach a lot.
So maybe it would be helpful for the audience who is listening to the audio-only version of the Women Mind the Water Art of This Series podcast, if you would describe one of your works. And I thought we'd talk about She Sea Wisdom, a ceramic female torso attached to a base of coral-inspired shapes. And I think I'll start by asking, why did you choose to use the capital letters SHE? Is the word she that precedes the title of this work an acronym?
No, it was more of an emphasis. And I just wanted to talk about how important women and people who identify as female are to society. And it started with a series that I did for a show at the Oceanside Museum of Art in Oceanside, California. And the show was titled Now. And it was 20 women. I proposed a show of 20 women talking about now. And at the time, it was 2019. We started doing the work in 2020, and all of a sudden now became so different from just the regular now. One of the things that was happening was women's marches, and that was so important to me to talk about that. So I created a series of She, the Power of Protest, and it was 55 10-inch torsos of all different colors and textures. And so I was talking about how we're all different, but yet when we come together, we can create change. And so that was the first She that I did. And then I continued using that torso. And so the She just kind of got carried through into my ocean pieces.
Okay, so could we describe She Wisdom and the thought process that drove its creation?
Sure. So I cast a 10-inch torso and I glaze it so that the body is smooth with gloss and also with opalescent over an aqua gloss. And on the She Wisdom jellyfish ones, I paint or draw in one jellyfish, and then all the other shapes are plastic bags floating in water.
Oh,
and
my.
you wouldn't really know that unless you took time to actually look at it and compare the drawings on them. And then I attach it at the same time that I sculpt the base, and I sculpt the base by doing a coil method. And I make like a rounded shape, and then I cut out different shapes so that the bottoms is kind of scalloped all around. And I just do that because I love the organic shape of that. Then I add texture by putting lace over that smooth surface and taking slip, which is mud or liquid clay.
Right.
And I brush it over the lace several times. You kind of have to let it dry just the perfect amount and then pull the lace up, and it leaves behind this texture. And I'm not going for lace. I'm just going for an interesting texture. So, and then it gets covered up with layers of handmade. I do cut out holes in it too, because you see that in the ocean all over the place. And then I make little balls and then hand make all the different coral forms that I attach to it. And then that gets fired at a bisque fire. I work with cone 5 clay. And then the next thing I do is do that glazing process where it's smooth on the body and textured, on the pieces. And I use a lot of different colors where the corals are. That gets fired. And then the last firing that I do is opalescent and gold. So I go around and touch different textures and different things to bring out a feeling of preciousness.
Oh my. The first time I saw some of your artwork on Instagram, I'm not sure that I understood it. I just went, oh, she's just working with the female body. I don't know how I feel about that. But the more I hear you talk and the more that I see what you're doing, it's just really inspiring. How does the muse for each piece come to you? Is it related to things that are personal to you or something that you have experienced or something else?
So I take it all in. The things that I'm thinking about, the things that I watch, that I read, that I see, that informs what I do. But the muse itself is just magical to me. And I have a really great example for that. When I was working on the Power Protest work, at that time, I was completely focused on that work, but I kept seeing a female torso that was a shell, two-sided shell, the front and the back. And I just kept seeing it. And I walk on the beach regularly, right? So I'm sure that informed some of it. I knew that I had to kind of stop what I was doing, make this piece, and then go back to my work. Because sometimes if you let these things go, they may go off to somebody else. The muse was like, okay, we're going to go over here. So that's my experience of the muse. And then once I completed the work and installed it in the museum, I went right to the ocean and started creating both the she shells and the she sea wisdom pieces.
Lovely. So I was going to ask you this question. I would say, when you create your pieces, are you consciously thinking about the viewer or are you driven more by a passion inside you? But before you answer that, I don't know how old your son is, but there you are sitting in front of these female torsos. And I just wondered, does it make your son uncomfortable to see torsos of naked women?
Okay, so first of all, we have 3 grown sons.
Okay.
They're all adults. But I was when I was a painter, I also did a lot of nudes, and to me, it's the divine feminine. And so my sons grew up knowing that they were goddesses. And so that was their experience. And we even had an experience when one was in elementary school and we were at the museum. And someone was concerned about it. I said, Cameron, come here, take a look. What is it that you see right there? And he turned, he says, oh, it's a goddess. So
that's lovely, because some
yeah.
little boys, especially when they get into upper elementary and middle school, are just sort of giggly. So that's a lovely way to bring up your children. So let's go back to the question. When you create your pieces, are you constantly thinking about the viewer, or are you driven more by something inside of you?
Definitely inside of me. The only time that I really think about someone else and what they want from my work is if it's someone that is a client or, a collector that is having me do a commission. And then I become a conduit. It's like this, I become the thing that they want. I become the artist to create what they want. But otherwise, I do not think about the viewer.
So Julia, I regularly ask my guests for a call to action, but I'm going to ask you this question in 2 parts. First, I'd like to hear what you think is the most important issue facing the ocean and where you are personally trying to make a difference.
Plastic trash in the ocean is such a huge thing, and I can make a difference by picking it up every time I see it. And here in Cardiff, we're really fortunate because I'm not the only walker on the beach that carries a plastic bag. In fact, there's a group of people that just regularly, almost every day, walk the beach and keep the plastic off. And boy, does it make a difference. And you can see it like, after a storm, or if people can't get down there, there'll be more that wash in. But when people can get on the beach, it's taken care of, and we're all working together. We're not even working together. It's just that everybody's doing it. So that's important to me.
And I'd like to ask you to offer advice to the audience on how they can make a difference.
Pick up plastic. Stop using plastic if you can. And it's so integral in our lives, plastic everything. But if you can avoid it and choose other things, one is you can get, instead of using plastic straws, metal straws are available, bamboo straws are available, and you can, some of them even come in a little container so you can carry it around in your purse. So if you have to have a straw, I just refuse straws because they're so damaging to the creatures in the ocean. And it's one choice you can make.
Very good. Well, thank you, Julia, for what you're doing and working to let people know why and how women are impacted and connected to the ocean. I hope listeners have gained an appreciation for the power of an artist to create moving statements about the ocean. In other words, how a woman can move others through her artwork, her inspired eye, and her passion. I'd like to remind listeners that I've been speaking with Julia C.R. Gray, a California-based artist whose message expresses both the vulnerability and the strength of women and our connection to the ocean. Julia is the latest guest on the Women Mind the Water Artivist Series podcast. The series can be viewed on womenmindthewater.com, Museum on Main Street, and YouTube. An audio-only version of this podcast is available on womenmindthewater.com, on iTunes and Spotify. Women Mind the Water is grateful to Jane Rice for the use of her song, Women of Water. All rights for the Women Mind the Water name and logo belong to Pam Ferris Olson. This is Pam Ferris Olson.